You know, there's a specific kind of silence you only find inside the first-class cabin of a Trans-Pacific flight. It's an expensive silence, the kind that smells like conditioned leather, recycled oxygen, and old money, where the air feels thinner, cleaner, like it's been scrubbed of all the desperate energy from the economy rose back in the chaotic belly of the plane. I was sitting there in seat for A, trying to disappear into the upholstery, feeling like a smudge of grease on a silk sheet, while my 6-year-old daughter, Leo short for Leonora, was vibrating with that pure, unadulterated energy that only kids have when they're about to be hurled into the sky. Inside a metal tube. We didn't belong there. Let's just get that out of the way right now. I'm Jackson Miller. Most people call me Jax, and for the last 3 years, since my wife Elena passed, I've been a carpenter in Seattle, smelling like sawdust and pine resin, driving a truck with a rusted tailgate, and living a life that's measured in 2x4s and daycare pickups. But Elena, she had this secret stash of miles, hundreds of thousands of them from her consulting days before the cancer took the lead. And she made me promise, literally made me swear on her grandmother's Bible, that I would take Leo to see the cherry blossoms in Tokyo. And I wouldn't do it sitting with my knees crushed against my chest in row for 8. So there we were, Flight 900 to Haneda, me in a flannel shirt that I'd tried to iron but still looked like it had seen a few too many construction sites, and Leo clutching this beaten-up model of an F-18 Hornet that I'd carved for her, making whoosh noises that were apparently piercing the expensive silence of the cabin. And that's when I felt the eyes. You don't need to look up to know when someone is dissecting you, peeling back your layers and judging the quality of the fabric underneath. It's a physical weight, a heat on the side of your neck. Across the aisle, in seat for D, sat Victoria Vance. I didn't know her name then. I just knew her type. She was sleek, sharp, terrifyingly polished. The kind of woman who looked like she was 3D printed out of titanium and ambition, wearing a suit that probably cost more than my truck, tapping on a tablet with nails that were like little red daggers. She let out this sigh, loud, theatrical, the kind of sigh designed to be a weapon, and then she flagged down the flight attendant, without even looking up from her screen. Just a snap of her fingers, quick and demanding. "Excuse me," she said, her voice like ice clinking in a glass. "Is there any way we can address the noise pollution? I paid $6,000 for a workspace, not a daycare center, and frankly, the smell of whatever that is, cedar chips and cheap detergent, is giving me a migraine." The flight attendant, a saint of a woman named Sarah, looked apologetic, but before she could speak, Victoria turned those cold, gray eyes directly on me. She didn't look at my face. She looked at my boots, then my faded jeans, then the worn elbows of my jacket, cataloging every loose thread as a personal failure. "Maybe," Victoria said, addressing me for the first time, but speaking about me like I was a piece of furniture. "You could explain to your child that some people actually contribute to the global economy and need to focus. Or perhaps you could request a downgrade to row 30, where I assume the volume levels are more appropriate for your demographic." I felt my jaw tighten, that old, familiar grinding of teeth, and I looked down at Leo, who had stopped playing, her little hand gripping the wing of her wooden plane so hard her knuckles were white, her big brown eyes wide and watering because even at 6, you know when you're being treated like dirt. The old Jax, the guy from 10 years ago. The guy with the call sign Echo who flew sorties off the deck of the USS Nimitz. He would have had a retort, something sharp and devastating, something that would have peeled the paint off Victoria's ego. But that guy was buried under layers of grief and sawdust. And the promise I made to Elena was to be a father, not a fighter, to be soft where the world was hard. Because Leo didn't need a warrior. She needed a dad who could braid hair and make pancakes. So I just swallowed the rage, tasting the bitterness of it, and leaned down to Leo. "Hey, bug," I whispered, forcing a smile that felt tight on my face. "Let's switch to stealth mode, okay? Like a recon mission. Silent running. Can you do that for Daddy?" Leo nodded, wiping her nose on her sleeve, which earned another disgusted noise from Victoria, and whispered, "Roger that, Daddy. Stealth mode active." Victoria smirked, a tiny, victorious twitch of her lips, and went back to her spreadsheets, secure in her world where money was the only rank that mattered. unaware that the guy she just dismissed as a blue-collar, nobody used to land $30 million jets on a pitching runway. In the middle of a pitch-black ocean, during a squall, the flight took off, and for the first 6 hours, it was exactly what you pay for: champagne, hot towels, and the smooth hum of massive engines pushing us over the Pacific. But nature doesn't care about your stock portfolio or your frequent flyer status, and it definitely doesn't care about the stitching on your Italian leather seats. It started with a bump, not a little shimmy, but a solid thud, like we'd just run over a pothole at 35,000 feet, and the seatbelt sign chimed on. With that polite, passive-aggressive ding, I looked out the window, past Leo's sleeping head, and saw it clouds piling up like bruised mountains, dark purple and charcoal gray, towering pillars of cumulonimbus that shouldn't have been there, hidden inside a clear air turbulence pocket that radar sometimes misses, until you're right on top of it. Then the drop happened. It wasn't a slide. It was a free fall, the kind that lifts your stomach into your throat, and pins at their trays went airborne. Champagne turned into golden rain, and a laptop, Victoria's sleek little tablet, went flying across the aisle and cracked against the bulkhead. Screams erupted from the back of the plane, a collective, primal sound of 200 people realizing they are very small and gravity is very big. And beside me, Leo woke up screaming, "Daddy! Daddy, I got you, I said, locking my arm over her chest, my eyes scanning the cabin, my body instantly shifting out of Carpenter Jacks and back into Lieutenant Miller, analyzing the vibration, the pitch of the engines, the angle of attack. The plane leveled out for a second, shuddering violently like a wet dog shaking off water. But then the lights flickered and died, plunging us into a gray gloom, followed immediately by the smell: ozone, burning plastic, and that distinct, metallic tang of fear. "Ladies and gentlemen," the intercom crackled. But it wasn't the calm, captain-speaking voice you expect. It was breathless, high-pitched, terrifying. "Please stay seated. Fasten your seatbelts. We are experiencing," the voice cut out. Then, the plane banked hard to the left, too hard, way past the standard 30 degrees, sliding into a bank that felt less like a turn and more like a fall, and the engine on the right side, the starboard engine, let out a sound I hadn't heard since a bad day over the Persian Gulf, a compressor stall. A series of loud, violent bangs like a shotgun going off right next to your ear. Victoria was hyperventilating now, her mask of superiority completely shattered. She was clutching the armrest so hard, her acrylic nails were snapping off, her face pale and slick with sweat, muttering, oh God, we're going to crash. We're crashing." I looked at her, really looked at her, and I didn't see the CEO anymore. I just saw a terrified woman who realized her bank account couldn't buy her way out of physics. Suddenly, the cockpit door burst open, which never happens, and Sarah, the flight attendant, stumbled out, her face ashen, looking wild-eyed at the business class passengers. Is there anyone here with medical experience?" she screamed over the roar of the dying engine. Or a pilot, anyone? The captain, he's slumped over, I think it's a stroke. And the first officer, he's trying but he's panicked, he can't stabilize. Silence. Dead, heavy silence. The hedge fund guy in 3A was crying. The influencer in Dubai was filming herself saying goodbye. Victoria was frozen, paralyzed. I looked at Leo. She was looking at me, her eyes huge, holding that wooden F-18. "Daddy?" she whispered. "Are you gonna fix it?" That question, it hit me harder than the turbulence. I had promised Elena, no more heroics, no more danger, just be a dad. But if I didn't get up, being a dad was going to end in about 4 minutes. When we hit the ocean, I unbuckled. The click sounded like a gunshot in the quiet cabin. I stood up, fighting the G-force of the spiraling turn, balancing on legs that remembered exactly how to stand on a moving deck. I reached into my back pocket, pulled out my wallet, and dug past the Home Depot credit card and the pictures of Leo until I found it, the laminated card I hadn't looked at in years, the one with the Department of Defense seal. I walked to the front, grabbing the bulkhead for stability, and stopped in front of Sarah. "I'm not a doctor," I said, my voice low, steady, cutting through the panic like a knife. But I have 3,000 hours in high-performance aircraft and I'm carrier qualified. Get me a headset. Sarah looked at my flannel shirt, my scuffed boots, and for a split second, I saw the hesitation, the same judgment Victoria had, but then I held up the ID. Lieutenant Commander Jackson Miller, United States Navy, aviator. She blinked, tears streaming down her face, and nodded. Oh God, okay. Come with me. I turned back to Leo one last time. Leo, baby, listen to me. Put your headphones on. Play your game. Daddy has to go to work for a minute. Do not move. Do you copy? Leo, brave little Leo, nodded, her chin trembling but her voice clear. Copy, Daddy. Blue skies, green lights. I finished our code phrase. Then I looked at Victoria. She was staring at me, her mouth open. Seeing the ghost of the man I used to be overlaying the carpenter she thought she knew. Hey, I said to her, sharp and commanding. You wanted quiet. You wanted efficiency. Watch the kid. If she gets scared, you hold her hand. That is your job now. Do you understand? Victoria, the woman who commanded boardrooms and fired people for sport, just nodded, stunned into obedience. Yes, I will. I turned and stepped into the cockpit, and the door clicked shut behind me, sealing me back into the world I thought I'd left forever, a world of alarms, flashing red lights, and the screaming reality of impending death. The scene inside was a nightmare. The captain, a heavy-set man in his 50s, was slumped over the yoke, unconscious, his weight pushing the nose down. The first officer, a kid who couldn't have been older than 25, was fighting him, pulling back on the controls with both hands, screaming into the radio, sweat pouring down his face, completely overwhelmed by the cascade of failures lighting up the dashboard. Like a Christmas tree from hell, get him off the stick. I barked, sliding into the jump seat and reaching over to haul the captain's dead weight back. Help me pull him back, now. We wrestled the captain's body off the controls, and the plane pitched up violently, the artificial horizon spinning. I jumped into the left seat as the flight attendants dragged the captain out to the galley. I strapped in. My hands found the controls, and it was strange. 3 years of holding hammers and drills vanished in a heartbeat, replaced by muscle memory that was burned into my DNA. The yoke felt heavy, fighting me, the hydraulic systems sluggish. Status report. I yelled at the kid, who was hyperventilating. Talk to me, son. What do we have? Engine 2 is gone. He stammered, pointing at the ICA's display. Compressor stall, severe vibration. I shut it down, but we lost the primary hydraulic bus, and the autopilot is dead, and I don't know where we are. The nav system reset when the power surged. Okay, breathe, I said, forcing my voice to be the anchor in his storm. My name is Jax. I'm flying this bird. You are going to handle the radios and the checklists. We are heavy, we are asymmetrical, and we are losing altitude. We need a divert field. Find me a runway, now. I grabbed the yoke, feeling the vibration of the remaining engine screaming to keep 300 tons of metal in the air. The plane wanted to roll right, wanted to flip over and die, and I had to cross control, stomping on the rudder pedal with my work boot, wrestling the beast level. Seattle Center, the kid screamed into the mic. Mayday, mayday, flight 902, engine failure, pilot incapacitated, requesting immediate vectors. Static, just static. We're too far out, I muttered, scanning the analog instruments. We're in the gap, no radar coverage. I looked out the windscreen. The storm was consuming us, hail hammering against the glass like machine gun fire. Lightning flashing so close it blinded me for seconds at a time. We were blind, crippled, and alone. There. The kid pointed at a chart on his iPad, his finger shaking. Cold Bay, Alaska. It's an old WWII strip, huge runway, emergency alternate. It's 180 miles north, 180 miles on one engine in a hurricane, I said through gritted teeth, watching the altimeter unwind. That's gonna be tight. Punch it in. Get me a heading. I banked the plane, and the structural groans of the airframe vibrated through my spine. I thought of Elena. I thought of the promise. I'm sorry, Elle, I'm really sorry. But I can't let her go down. Back in the cabin, Victoria was staring at the cockpit door. The plane was lurching, dropping hundreds of feet at a time. Beside her, Leo was crying silently, clutching that wooden plane. Victoria looked at her own hands, manicured, soft, useless, and then at this little girl in her unicorn t-shirt. She remembered Jax's order. "That is your job now." For the first time in her life, Victoria reached out not to take, but to give. She unbuckled her belt, a dangerous move, and slid across the gap, grabbing Leo's hand. It was sticky and small. "It's okay," Victoria whispered, her voice trembling but gaining strength. "Your dad. He's flying the plane. He's going to save us. He's a carpenter," Leo sobbed. "He fixes porches." "No," Victoria said, looking at the cockpit door with a newfound reverence. "No, sweetie. He's not just a carpenter. I think he's a hero." Up front, the battle was raging. We were losing altitude too fast. The drag from the dead engine was killing our lift. "I need more power on one," I yelled. "If we push it past 95%, we risk overheating." The kid yelled back. The applause in the cabin was deafening, a wave of hysterical relief crashing over me. But I couldn't hear much of it. My ears were ringing with the phantom scream of that dying engine. And my carpenter's arms, felt like lead weights, hanging at my sides. People were reaching out to touch me as I walked down the aisle carrying Leo, like I was some kind of religious relic, grabbing my flannel shirt, patting my back, sobbing thank yous that I didn't feel like I deserved. I just wanted off that plane. I just wanted to feel the ground not moving under my feet. We deplaned onto the frozen tarmac of Cold Bay, Alaska, place that is literally the middle of nowhere, with a wind that cuts right through your bones. The emergency slides hadn't deployed because we were at a gate, or what passed for one. Just a mobile stairway pushed up against the fuselage by a guy in a thick parka. Victoria was right behind us. She didn't have her coat. She'd probably left it in the overhead bin. Or maybe she just forgot she owned expensive things in the face of near death. She was shivering, hugging herself, her perfect bob hair windswept into a mess. I stopped at the bottom of the stairs, shifting Leo to my left hip, and without thinking, just reflex, really, I unbuttoned my Carhartt jacket. It was old, lined with fleece, smelling of sawdust and that cheap detergent she had mocked 3 hours ago. "Here," I said, draping it over her shoulders. "It's cold." She looked at the jacket like it was a foreign object, then up at me. Her eyes were wide, rimmed with smudged eyeliner. I can't take this. You're in a t-shirt. I'm from Seattle." I shrugged. "I'm fine." "Put it on." She pulled it tight around her. It was 3 sizes too big, swallowing her designer suit, and for a second, she looked so small. "Thank you," she whispered. And this time, there was no ice in her voice, just a crack in the porcelain. We were herded into the tiny terminal, which was basically one heated room with vending machines and a few bewildered Alaskan staff members trying to process 200 shell-shocked passengers. The airline was scrambling to get a relief plane, but we were stuck there for at least 6 hours. I found a corner near a radiator, sat on the floor, and pulled Leo into my lap. She fell asleep instantly, exhausted by the adrenaline crash. About 20 minutes later, Victoria walked over. She had 2 cups of vending machine hot chocolate, the watery kind with the little marshmallows that never quite melt. She sat down on the dirty linoleum floor next to me. Not on a chair, on the floor. "It's not champagne," she said, offering me a cup. A weak attempt at humor. I took it. "Better than champagne right now." We sat in silence for a long time, watching the snow swirl outside the window against the darkness. "I didn't know," she said finally, staring into her cup. "About your wife, or your service. I treated you like you were invisible, or worse, like you were an inconvenience. People see what they want to see," I said, taking a sip. It burned my tongue, and the pain felt good, grounding. "You saw a guy in dirty clothes with a noisy kid. You didn't see the rest because you didn't look." "I never look," she admitted, her voice quiet. "I look at spreadsheets. I look at profit margins. I look at efficiency. I built a company worth $200 million by optimizing human capital. That's what I call people. Human capital." She laughed, a bitter, sharp sound. "And today, my capital was worthless." I sat there, strapped in that leather seat, realizing that I could buy this entire airline, and it wouldn't stop me from hitting that mountain. And the only thing standing between me and nothingness was the man I tried to kick out of business class. She turned to look at me, and the intensity in her gaze was different now. It wasn't predatory. It was searching. "Why did you do it?" she asked. "After what I said, after how everyone looked at you, you could have just sat there. Let the pilots figure it out. The pilots were down," I said. "But you risked your life. You have a daughter. Why?" I looked down at Leo's sleeping face, smoothing a curl of hair off her forehead. "Because of the promise to Elena, my wife." I took a breath, the grief still a dull ache in my chest. She made me quit flying fighters because she said I was addicted to the edge, said I loved the danger more than I loved the peace. When she got sick, she made me swear I'd bury Echo, that was my call sign, and just be Jackson. Just be a dad. But today, being a dad meant I had to break the promise to keep the promise. Does that make sense? Victoria nodded slowly. "You broke the rule to save the heart." Something like that. "I don't have anyone," she blurted out. It seemed to surprise her, that admission. "I mean, I have employees. I have a board of directors. I have an ex-husband who sues me for alimony every 2 years. But when that plane dropped, I didn't have anyone to text. I didn't have a Leo." She looked at my daughter with a longing that was painful to witness. I realized that if we crashed, my legacy would be a quarterly earnings report and a really nice apartment that no one visits. "You can change that," I said. "You're still here. You walked away, did I?" She pulled my jacket tighter around herself. "I feel like the person who got on that plane died up there. I'm just the leftovers. Leftovers make the best meals." I smiled. "Ask anyone who cooks." She actually laughed then. A real laugh. It made her look 10 years younger. 6 hours later, a rescue plane arrived. The mood was different. The class divide had vanished. The first-class passengers were sharing chargers with the economy folks. People were talking. Trauma is the great equalizer. When we landed in Tokyo a day late, exhausted, smelling like stale fear and airport coffee, the media was there. Apparently, the Carpenter pilot story had leaked. Cameras, microphones, the works. I put my head down, pulled Leo close, and tried to push through. I didn't want it. I didn't want the fame. I just wanted to see the cherry blossoms. But Victoria, she did something unexpected. The reporters swarmed her. They recognized her, of course. "Ms. Vance. Ms. Vance. Was it terrifying? Tell us about the ordeal." She stopped. She looked at them. Then she looked at me, trying to sneak away to a taxi. "You want a story?" she said, her voice projecting that old CEO authority, but used for a different purpose. "The story isn't about me. It's not about the airline. It's about a man who was judged by the cut of his clothes and the size of his bank account, and who turned out to be the only reason any of us are breathing today. His name is Jackson Miller, and he is a reminder that you better be careful who you look down on, because you never know when you might need to look up to them." She pointed at me, and then she turned and walked away, leaving the press stunned. She didn't give interviews about herself. She gave the spotlight to the guy in the flannel shirt. I didn't see her for the rest of the trip. Leo and I saw the cherry blossoms. We ate sushi. We fulfilled the promise. 3 months later, I was back in Seattle, on a job site, framing a new deck. My phone rang. Unknown number. "Hello? Jackson. It's Victoria." I paused, wiping sweat from my forehead. "Victoria, hey, how's the human capital business?" "I sold it," she said. "What?" "I sold the company last week. I kept a seat on the board, but I'm done running the rat race." She sounded lighter, breezier. "I started a foundation for veterans transitioning to civilian life, helping them find jobs that appreciate their skills, not just manual labor, unless that's what they want." "That sounds incredible," I said, genuinely shocked. "I need a director," she said. "Someone who understands both worlds. Someone who knows that a carpenter can fly a 787. The pay is, well, it's better than framing decks, and the hours are flexible. Plenty of time for school pickups." I looked at the half-finished deck. I looked at my scarred hands. "I don't wear suits, Victoria." "I know," she said. "I'm counting on it." Flannel is mandatory on Fridays. Come on, Jax. Help me build something that actually lasts. I took the job. But here's the kicker. And this is the part that keeps me up at night sometimes. Last week, we were at a fundraising gala. Victoria was there, looking elegant but softer, wearing a dress that wasn't armor anymore. I was there, in a suit okay. I bought one suit. A guy walked up to us, some young hotshot investor, wearing a watch that cost more than my car. He looked at me, saw the calluses on my hands, saw the way I held my champagne glass a little awkwardly, and he smirked. He turned to Victoria and said, "Victoria, darling, is this your security detail?" He looks a bit rough for the donor list. Victoria didn't even blink. She put her hand on my arm, looked that guy dead in the eye, and said, "He's not security. He's the reason I'm alive. And frankly, looking at you, I'd trade your entire portfolio for 1 ounce of his character. Now, excuse us. We have work to do." She walked me away, leaving him standing there with his mouth open. And as we walked, she leaned in and whispered, "Stealth mode, right?" "Roger that," I smiled. "Green lights, it's a nice ending, right? The Hallmark version." But let's be real for a second. I think about that flight every day. I think about the moment I stood up, and I wonder, if I hadn't had that ID in my pocket, if I was just Jackson the carpenter, not Jackson the ex-pilot, would Victoria have ever listened? Would she have ever changed? Or would she have just watched me struggle, judged me, and died thinking she was better than me? We live in a world that loves titles. We love the CEO and the commander. But what about the guy who just fixes things? What about the single dad trying to keep a promise? Victoria changed because she had to, because death stripped away the pretense. But why do we have to wait for the plane to fall out of the sky to start treating each other like human beings? Why does it take a crisis to see the worth in the person sitting next to you? Next time you're on a flight, or in a grocery store, or just walking down the street, look at the person next to you. The one in the dirty boots. The one with the crying kid. The one who looks tired. Don't just see the struggle. See the story. Because you never know. That might be the person who saves your life one day. Or maybe, just maybe, you could be the one who saves theirs, just by treating them with a little bit of dignity. So, tell me, who are you judging right now? And what would happen if the turbulence hit?